Today is Thursday, February 9th, 2000, and it's my pleasure to be with Eva Bacal, a 1990 graduate of the University of Arizona College of Law. My name's Vicki Fleischer, and Eva, I'm here to ask you a few questions about your experience.
Go right ahead.
Okay, great. Let's start out with, before you went to law school, why did you decide to go?
Well, a lot of reasons. One of them is that my daughter knew I had wanted to be a lawyer, and she was going to go to law school, and said, let's take the test together, and we did. Let's apply together, and we did, and let's go together, and we did.
Oh, that's wonderful. Did you take a lot of same classes?
Actually, we had very few classes together.
Once you were there, you sort of...
We tried to have classes together because we enjoyed being together, and we ran together every day, so that was great.
That's good release at law school.
Yes.
To exercise like that. Did you only apply to the University of Arizona
Yes.
College of Law? So you were living in Tucson at the time?
I was living in Tucson. I had my family here. My youngest child had not started high school yet. So I think we started law school when she started high school.
What was it like to be in law school with your daughter?
It was great fun. My only worry was that I'd sort of put a damper on her, but apparently I didn't. She had a good experience and made friends, and it was very good.
That's great. What was it like to go to law school and to be a parent of a child who was still at home?
Well, I had been working as a parent of a child who was still home, and I had been on my school board, so it was nothing new to be involved in a lot of things and still have a child at home. Plus, a lot of my fellow students had children at home. Some of them even were pregnant and had children while we were in school.
I bet that's a common experience. I think people take advantage of having some flexibility in their schedule.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think that it was not uncommon for very busy people to be in law school. And I was on my school board the entire time I was in law school, and I was also on a national board and had to go to Washington about 3 or 4 times a year while I was in law school.
So you sound like you kept busy. How many students were in your first year class when you began?
I think it was a class of 160, 150, something like that.
That sounds right. And did most of the students graduate?
Yes. There were some who didn't, and we knew who they were. I think we were a class that kept tabs on each other.
Was it a diverse group of students?
Extremely diverse. Half the class was made up of women, which I think we were starting the trend of reflecting the community. Our average age was something like 35, which was very unusual. We had diverse cultural and ethnic groups in the class. One of my good friends was Native American, and I think that was an effort the school was making to attract Native American students and Hispanic Latina students. We had 3 doctors, or 3 or 4 doctors in the class, quite a few teachers and nurses, some of whom worked their way through school.
So
we had a lot of representation.
A lot of second career people.
Second
going
career,
back.
third career.
Yeah, wow.
We had a retired professor. I was very glad I was not the oldest person in my class. We just had a broad mix, some retired military.
Were most of your classmates from Arizona?
I would say most were, but not all. And again, we weren't always aware of where people were from unless they told us.
Right.
But it was I think, an unusual class. I don't know if the other classes throughout the 80s were like this class, but I thought it was a really wonderful class.
Great. How difficult was it to get into law school when you applied?
It was very competitive at the time. I think that there were something like 10 applications for each acceptance. So it was pretty difficult.
And
I'm sure they took into account life experience, because my undergraduate experience, I was not a serious student. which is an understatement.
I think they take into account the whole package. Was there summer school when you were a student?
Yes, there were people who went to summer school. I never did. I had some life demands during the summer, my first summer. And I did clerk the second
That's
year.
what I was going to ask you. Where did you clerk?
I clerked for what was then O'Connor Kavanaugh in Tucson. I know they wanted people to go to Phoenix also, but I still had, as I say, my family at home, and I was not able to do that.
Okay. And how was that experience? Did you enjoy it?
It was interesting. Yes, I did. I did.
While you were in law school, were there clinical programs?
Yes.
And did you participate?
And I did participate in one of them. I clerked for one of the judges.
Oh, great. Which judge?
Judge Fleischman, who's
Okay.
not on the bench anymore,
Right.
but I did enjoy that.
Good.
I did not do the trial practice, the 38E, but I would have liked doing that. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Again, it was a matter of balance. I had gone to an Ivy League undergraduate school, and what impressed me in law school was how rigorous it was, how intellectually challenging it was, and how it certainly met or even exceeded the standard of what I had experienced at an Ivy League school.
Well, that says good things about what we're doing. That's great to hear.
And I had gone to Harvard summer school, so I had experienced that also, and I think that the U of A measures up in every way.
Oh, so do we. Good to hear. What type of student activities were there when you were in law school?
Oh, there were lots. I was a member of the Women Lawyers Association, which was very active. We had lots of uppity women, and they did participate in not only in that group, but I think in the whole fabric of law school. I tutored for the Minority Law Students Association a few times. There were both conservative and liberal groups, and I didn't participate in either of those. And there were also some religious groups on campus, so there were quite a few groups.
What kind of faculty-student interaction was there when you were in law school?
It was very active. I did serve on some faculty-student committees. I served on the committee that was looking at the curriculum.
Excellent.
And again, there was a lot of respect for student input in that committee. We had very active faculty involvement. I was on the journal, the International and Comparative Law Journal, and the faculty advisor was very active in the group, and so there was good interaction there.
Great. Great.
And Dean Marcus was my advisor for the substantial paper, and I thought he was wonderful.
Tell me more about Dean Marcus.
I thought he was not only a wonderful scholar, but very approachable, and very understanding of student concerns, both as dean and as a professor, and very demanding. He would not let what developed into a friendship get in the way of demanding really a good paper. He wouldn't let me slide.
Right. Good. What were the prospects, the employment prospects like for your classmates and you getting out of law school in 1990?
It was kind of interesting. We were on the outer edge of very good recruiting, but it was the outer edge, so that our second year we were heavily recruited. By the third year, if we hadn't been made an offer, it was difficult.
Yeah, I know that the market, the legal job market kind of took a dip in the early 90s.
It did. It did. Even though at first it was full of, recruiting and wooing of students,
Right.
so that lots of students had very rich experiences.
And what did you do right after you got out of law school? in terms of
Right
jobs?
after I got off, I had still been working, and so I sort of tapered away from that, and I took a little time off.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came to the Attorney General's office. At the time, the office had the position that I was interested in was in Phoenix.
Mm.
And I did consult with a couple of professors at the U of A before I made my decision. I talked to Woody,
Mm-hmm.
and I talked to Tom Mauet,
Mm-hmm.
and asked their advice,
Mhm.
whether they thought it was a good idea to stay in Tucson and wait or go to Phoenix and have the experience. And they both said, go for it.
So you went up to
So I
Phoenix.
went to Phoenix and
Uh-huh.
commuted.
Every day.
No, I had an
Good.
apartment. No.
Good. And how was that experience?
It was wonderful.
Good.
It was something I wouldn't give up. They thought, do it for a year or two, and I ended up doing it for almost 6 years.
Yes. And then you came down to the Tucson office.
And then I came to the Tucson office when there was an opening.
Okay, good.
Valentine's,
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We had Halloween, this is
Yeah.
Valentine's.
Okay.
My brain is not working yet.
You're
I
fine.
need a second cup
Great.
of coffee.
I can relate. Okay. Eva, what was the bar exam like?
It was awful. At the time that I took it, it was, first of all, I thought irrelevant. Second of all, some parts of it, I thought if anyone practiced like that, it would be malpractice.
Mm-hmm.
I could not imagine today answering any civil procedure question without pulling out my book, because the rules change. And at this point, I know I'm on the Civil Practice and Procedure Rules Committee for the State Bar, and I know they change all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What Professor Mauet told me was, think of it as hazing. And that's more or less what it was. It's like fraternity hazing. It's going through a process that may or may not be relevant, just to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, at the time we took it, they did not, it was pass-fail. So if in a question you got 98% of it right but didn't get up to the end, then you wouldn't get any credit.
Huh.
You would be treated the same as, I think there was a cutoff of whatever number of points you got, but you either got those points or didn't. If you got one less, you fail, and you're treated the same as if you got nothing.
Mm-hmm. Was it all
That was
essay when you
strange.
took it?
No, there was also multiple choice, and
Okay.
I liked that. I did very well in
The
that, but they
multiple
didn't
choice.
average them.
Huh. They
Later,
wouldn't.
they started averaging them. When I took the multiple choice, I did very well in that.
Mhm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that would have pulled me through without bothering on the essays,
There you
but they
go.
didn't average it at the time.
Hmm. Tell
I
me-
think it's gotten better. I have been told it was better because one of my classmates was clerking for whichever Supreme Court justice was in charge of the test, and he failed.
Hmm.
And that, in fact, both of that justices' clerks failed, and I think in response to that, he thought something's wrong with his test.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Tell me about some of your favorite classes in law school.
That's difficult. I really enjoyed it. In fact, I took a great many more than I needed to graduate.
Mhm.
I just had a wonderful time. I did like one of the small seminars that Rob Williams put on, which was looking at, well, we called it Crit Lit Fem Sem. It was the one looking at what were called the crits, a certain group of Harvard professors who looked at law and did deconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
And then we read a lot of the feminist
Mm-hmm.
writings, and it was a very challenging class, and it had few people, but again, diverse experiences.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So that was fun. I did enjoy entertainment law that Paul Marcus taught. And then I thought the classes, the regular required classes, were very good.
Mm-hmm. Good. How much reading were you assigned when you were in law school?
A great deal.
Mhm.
And the thing is, we still do lots of reading, and we still do lots of research.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to get all my reading done on the weekend because I knew that I was busy during the week. So I usually was prepared, and I usually was prepared for the entire week by Sunday.
That's better than most of your classmates, I would guess. What were the exams like?
They would vary. The first exam that I took that Professor Dobbs gave, I thought afterwards my poor brain was given an aerobic workout and it's exhausted. I had never felt my brain so tired before.
Goodness.
But after that, I thought that was a good initiation. And I did well in his class. But he's the one who taught us, I thought, how to take a multiple choice exam. And I thought that he also taught just so that we would know torts. So that even though I don't practice that kind of law at the moment, I think you could wake me up in the middle of the night and ask me what are the elements of, and I could go through it because he taught it so thoroughly.
Well, that must have helped for the bar exam.
It did.
Yeah.
That part was a breeze.
That's good. Did you have essay exams in some of your classes?
Yes.
And how long did they usually give you to take the essay exam?
They were generally 3 hours. And again, that was reasonable. And they taught us basically how to do an essay, how to look at it, how to organize it, and that was helpful for getting out and practicing.
Yeah. In terms of the teaching techniques that the professors used, did a lot of them use the Socratic method?
They did, and I think that the Socratic method has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is if you're truly searching for the truth, fine, but generally what was going on was they were searching for the answers they wanted, and we thought of it as hide the ball.
So it wasn't overly popular among the students.
No, I think what it did was cause some cynicism. We also figured out who was going to get called on when, and you'd see people not showing up in class if they were not prepared because they didn't want to get called on. And we did, I think at one point the class did watch Paper Chase because...
Was it as bad as Paper Chase?
No.
Yeah. That's good.
No, there was a conscious effort made by the school, I think by Dean Marcus, for students to watch out for other students, and that's why there was the tutoring and mentoring and watching out for people who were in trouble.
That's great. Sounds like a nice environment. What type of off-campus events were there when you were in law school?
Well, I really didn't have time to participate. So I know there is the legal fraternity, and I know that people were involved in that, and there was even one romance of someone. We had small sections to our first year. Someone who met in a small section and are now married, and
oh wow!
So that was fun.
That's nice. What was the graduation ceremony like?
Ours was nice. It wasn't extraordinary. We had at that time I think there was a limitation on money that could be spent on speakers, and so we had Professor Dobbs as the speaker. And of course we all admired him and liked him a lot, but we were limited from inviting some outside person. I think that's changed.
It has. Tell me about the faculty. You mentioned how Dean Marcus was very accessible to students. Was the rest of the faculty the same?
Some more than others. Professor Ratner was very accessible, and I believe still is, from what I know. And he was always there, and there were always students in his office. It was a continuing stream. I think Professor Woods was always accessible. Professor Maue, who's, as we know, not only well known throughout the state but throughout the country, was always accessible and was always fun.
Yes, he's a terrific guy. I used to carry around the Maui book whenever I was practicing law, so I would take it to court with me now. What exactly am I supposed to do next?
Well, what I would do is, when I first started, was call him.
I had the luxury of knowing him at the time, so yeah, that's a great advantage.
I called him a few times from Phoenix and said, I have this situation, and he would send me to the right books or the right cases a couple of
wow.
times.
Oh,
I had a
wonderful.
situation on polygraph testimony, and he was helpful.
That's great. That's great. Do you know the requirements of the faculty in terms of scholarship and publishing, that type of work? Outside of teaching, are you aware of what other requirements were on the faculty?
I'm sure they are, because every faculty has to publish.
Mhm.
My brother taught for a while at NYU and really stopped because he didn't want to be pressured to publish when he was an excellent teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And was a writer and is back at home writing.
Well, good for him if that's what makes him happy. Yeah. Tell me.
And I'm always pleased. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm always pleased when I read the name of someone who was a professor who publishes something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think our
yeah, that's
faculty
fun.
does a lot of that. You went to school in the late 80s. Tell me a little bit about what was going on in the world at that time. Just sort of, what was the news?
The 80s wasn't like the time when I really was in school and growing up. It wasn't like the 60s or so. It was much more quiet, much more conservative.
Mm-hmm.
I think that my class had a great many people, or that the class average was more conservative perhaps than the faculty.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people in my class who sort of grumbled about, this liberal faculty when they were very conservative students, which is the reverse of my other experience when I was an undergraduate, where the students were more liberal and we all were wrangling against this conservative faculty.
Mm-hmm. Times changed, I guess, yeah. Was there any particular thing that happened inside the College of Law while you were there that you found to be interesting? Some people have given us examples about how the clinic started, that was before
Yes,
when you went
we
there,
did
or
the
a change in the grade curve or something like that. Was there anything of note?
I think that happened before we got there.
Mhm.
The change in the grade curve happened before we arrived.
Mhm.
The concern for other students happened really before we arrived.
Mhm.
The mentoring and the tutoring, all of that was already set up.
Yeah.
So
What would you think was the most interesting thing that happened while you were there? Was there anything? Or?
there was nothing that comes to mind where I think that's the most interesting
Mhm.
thing. I think one of the things that was interesting was that the dean left and the students were involved in the search. I do remember
Mm-hmm.
fellow students telling us about being involved in the search, and I believe that the new candidates for dean were trotted past certain student groups. So the women lawyers had some say in who was selected
That's
and in the
interesting.
process.
Yeah.
And that was interesting.
Definitely. Did you feel prepared for legal practice when you got out of law school?
Not really. I think some of the seminars that I took helped, because the kind of writing that you do in motions and in briefs are not really what we practiced. And even when we did that, the first year moot court, it wasn't a realistic problem
Mm-hmm.
that we were confronted with.
What do you think the law
Since
school
then-
could do? Yeah.
I think a lot of it could be done, perhaps in moot court, to take real cases rather than making up hypotheticals. Just to take real cases, and then after the briefing process shows students the real briefs, especially if some of them
That's a really
were
good idea.
outstanding. And I've had judges in CLEs say that they thought that this particular statement in a statement of facts was telling, or that this way of doing it. It's very hard to write statements of fact. I still have to do it occasionally.
Mhm.
The nice thing about this office is that we get to do everything. I practice administrative law, and I appear before administrative law judges, but I also have appeared before Superior Court judges, appellate court judges. My first year in the office, I got to argue in the Ninth Circuit. So
Wow.
we do get to follow our cases along, and they encourage us, for the most part, to just keep pushing. But I think it would be helpful just to take a real situation and the real briefs, and then have some real criticism, not looking for esoteric points, but the kinds of things that impress judges, and learning how to write statements of fact, which is very difficult, or a statement of the case.
Yeah. Well, those are all really good suggestions. What would you say is a defining characteristic of the University of Arizona Law School?
I think the defining characteristic really is how hard the law school is trying to not only maintain but to even improve the level of scholarship, the level of students, the level of understanding, and the diversity. I do think that the law school has always been aware of the fact that Tucson is 60 miles from the Mexican border, that Tucson's population is made up of people who come here from other places, but also people who have been here for many generations, and takes into account the population of Tucson, which does include people of Hispanic backgrounds and people of Native American backgrounds, and to a lesser extent, people of African American backgrounds. It's a mixed community. My law school class reflected that, and that was very, very, I think it was very enriching for all the students.
Great. If you were going to convey a message to future law students, what would that be?
Do it. A lot of people who were my classmates, not a lot, but a few, did not go on to practice law per se, but it's a good preparation for many things. It's a good preparation for teaching. It's a good preparation for journalism. I came from advertising and public relations, but it's a good preparation for those fields also if somebody wanted to go back into the public sector. And it's a good preparation for administration. You learn organizational skills, you learn thinking skills, you learn writing skills, and all of that's helpful.
Yeah, I would agree. What would you like to see the law school accomplish in the future, Eva?
Well, I think the one thing that everyone complains about in the legal profession is lowering, not only a lowering of ethics, but a lowering of fellowship. And I think the law school could again stress ethics, that ethics are important, that they're not worth trading, and that winning is not everything. And part of what the public sees as the law, and I'm thinking of some of the television programs, is that winning is everything. Well, winning is important, but it's more important, I think, to not only serve your client, but serve the community. And right now, if you try to do that, you might be in breach of some of the ethical rules. I think that the law school and lawyers in general should work to change that, so that the public good, again, is stressed.
Great. Is there anything that you would like to add that I haven't asked you about?
No, I don't know if I forgot to mention any of the professors I studied with. I just was very impressed. I can't tell you again how excellent the faculty was.
Great. Can you tell me, on a final note, who some of your classmates are and what they did after law school, and if you still keep in touch with them?
Well, one of my classmates was Rose Cecil, and her office is right behind mine.
Oh, that's nice.
So, my daughter is now a justice of the peace. So we see this program, Judging Amy, and I think that's Susie.
That's great.
So we have Susie the judge, who's still a triathlete. And let me think of who else my classmates were. I did not keep in touch with all of them. I kept in touch with some of them. I think they're all around. I know that Jim Mackey is with Snell Wilmer still, and that's who he went with first year. Craig Cameron has gone from job to job, but he's, I think, just getting good law experience and stayed kind of in touch. I know that Terry Pullman, who was one of our classmates, is now teaching. Our class valedictorian, or the first in the class, Sybil, went to Washington and then went to Colorado and is now in Colorado. And I am aware that she was not, did not enjoy the large firm scene and is now, I believe, working for the federal government and likes that a great deal more. There's someone else. There are a couple of people from my class who are in the Attorney General's office in Phoenix. So I would see them.
Sounds like you keep in touch with a lot of people, yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, so tell me something that you think the law school could do better now.
I thought when I was in school we did not do enough outreach into the community to other practicing attorneys to see what's out there. And actually I know there were pressures on the placement office, but we didn't get enough information on what to do, on how to apply for a clerkship, for instance. I did not know about applying for a clerkship and would have. Or I didn't know how important it was. And had a last minute, basically a last minute request for an interview if I was interested in a Supreme Court clerkship. And I was busy studying for one of my finals, and I said, I can't come to the interview. Had I known how important it was, I might have gone to the interview and, you know, and known that I was prepared in my studying and not studied so hard. So I think that was one of the weaknesses, and I'm aware that now the Law College is trying to do more of reaching out and of having practicing attorneys mentor students, but we didn't have that. And I think it would have been helpful, especially to me as an older student. I would have liked having someone in the community tell me not only what is out there, but a realistic picture of what I should and shouldn't be trying to do.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be very helpful. Well, thank you for sharing that.